If I got a bonus on a slot machine, I would get agitated because it was an interruption. It was an interruption in this aura that I had going in front of me. I'd be sitting there with the ticket in my teeth. I really don't even want to wash my hands because I just want to get back to that machine. Gambling took away my ability to enjoy anything in my life. It can really happen to anybody.
Hey everybody, welcome back to the One Day at a Time podcast. Today's guest is Alex. She's a retired school teacher here to share her story with gambling harm. Alex, thanks so much for joining.
You're welcome. It's nice to finally talk to you in person.
Yeah, I really appreciate you taking the time today. And, let's just jump right into it. Do you remember the first time that you gambled?
I remember the first time that I experienced any gambling actually as a child. The first time I ever was around gambling was at the horse race track. So when a relative would come from out of town, my parents would take us to the racetrack with them. And as children, and I'm old, so I'm 60. So it was a while back. And it's when the people used to, when they didn't win, rip their tickets and throw them in the air. So as children, we used to walk around and we used to pick up these little tickets. So that was the first experience that I had in the world of gambling. The second experience I had was around the mid-90s. Now, in Pennsylvania in the mid-90s, there would have been racetracks, horse racing tracks, but there would have been no casinos at that point. I think the casinos started around 2008. So in the mid-90s, I was dealing with a transition. I have traits of autism, and one of the things I have struggled with my entire life is transitions from one part of my life to the next part of my life. So the transition that I was dealing with in the mid-90s was going from college to getting a job for the first time. I spent about 6 months in and out of mental health dealing with anxiety and depression. And one of the ways I sort of dealt with it was by escaping. And I would escape to my friend's house in New Jersey, which is close to Atlantic City. And one of the things that she liked to do was occasionally go down to Atlantic City. These are the days of quarters and buckets of quarters down in Atlantic City. It's the mid-90s. So when you were playing on slot machines, it was slower. You got to pick out 3 quarters and get it in the slot and then push the button. So it's definitely a slower experience. I remember that was the first time I'd ever walked into a casino. It was like an adult amusement park. Like there were animated figures and lights and all sorts of pretty things. And I was like, okay, I get what this is. I had never been in a casino before. I was dealing with anxiety and depression. So we would walk up and down the boardwalk, play a little slots. And again, this is the mid-90s. So I want to feel like we took $20 or $40 each to gamble with. It wasn't a large sum of money. Nobody was planning on winning a lot of money. We'd get a pastrami sandwich and head on home. It was probably what I would call normal gambling. And I don't think I probably went to the casino with her more than 4 or 5 times in 6 months. Eventually, I got a teaching position. My life got back together again, and I went back to my life. Didn't think about going gambling, didn't want to go gambling. There was no effect from that experience. Fast forward to 2014. I've moved in with my parents, my stepfather and my mother. My stepfather, he has dementia, and he has asked me to come live with them to help care for him and eventually be able to take care of my mother, who is still living to this day. My mother has a lot of mental health problems herself. I had been dealing with empty nest syndrome. So I'm dealing with my daughter going off to college. She's got her own life. I'm trying to figure out who I am again. My stepfather dies in 2014. My mother held it together for about a year, and then she fell apart. She just went. It was a very willful going. Just her mental health hasn't been the same since he passed away, since about a year after he passed away. And this was a great deal of stress because it was the same sorts of traumas that I had seen as a child with my mother. So it was a lot to deal with. In the spring of 2015, I had started watching on YouTube slot channels. I found them relaxing, calming. Sometimes I would fall asleep to them. And I was curious about it now. It was different. No more quarters. These tickets came out of the machine. And in my mind, I'm thinking, well, that's easier. That makes sense. And finally I decided I'm gonna try this. I'm gonna go to the casino. It's 2016 by that time. About 2016. And I go to the casino because there's one very close to me. Now I don't have to go all the way to Atlantic City. So I go and I have a nice experience, but my thoughts in my head are the same as they were back in the 90s. My thought is, well, this is okay. This is where adults go to escape. This is where adults go to have a good time. It's like an amusement park, but it's for adults. That was the same thinking that went on in my head. And let me tell you, I felt like it took off like a rocket. It wasn't even close to okay, probably from that point on.
Wow.
I was almost stimming, which is a term that is used with autism to kind of comfort yourself. I was almost stimming with the slot machines. I was just locked in, to the point where I felt physically different in my mind, physically different in my body. It was having almost like a physical effect on me.
This physical effect, because you say when you were watching the slot streamers online, it gave you a sense of relaxation, enjoyment. What was that sensation like in person? Was it relaxation? Was it disengagement? Or was it like a thrill?
It was numbness.
Numbness.
Yes, it was disassociation. Nothing matters but this machine. Everything else that's stressing me out, my mother, everything else in my life is going away. I was escaping into that machine. But the physical feelings I would feel after the complete overstimulation of the casino was like a throbbing in my body. I could almost feel my heartbeat in my ears. I would be flushed, sweaty. It was like I had cortisol. That's what I would say. It was probably a really big rush of cortisol and adrenaline going through me. It was just an odd feeling. It was just a weird physical feeling. It was mental, but it was also physical.
How long were you sitting at these machines to experience this feeling? Was it within just a couple minutes, or was it hours?
As long as I could. I would sit there for as long as I could. The minute I would get like, when I was driving to the casino, I couldn't get there fast enough. There was traffic. That was just agitating me. If I caught the light when I was getting off the exit, that agitated me. I had to get in there and just get seated. And when I finally would sort of have my first seat, I was comfortable as long as I had so much money in the machine. And then there came a point where it started to cause anxiety because I could see my money going away. And I wasn't there to win money. I'm a mathematician. I have a degree in mathematics. I understand that the theoretical limit as x approaches infinity of 1 over x, which is what a slot machine is, with payout percentages less than 100%, that goes to 0. If you push that button long enough, just depends on how long, that's going to go to 0. I did understand that. I knew there was a price that I was paying for this, but I was so quickly absorbed in it. And then the worst thing happened, which you've talked about and I've heard other people talk about, was I hit a jackpot. That started a fallacy in my mind that this would be okay. This would be manageable because my money would eventually come back to me. That was the fallacy in my head. And over the next, go ahead.
That's incredibly conflicting to what you just said, though. When you say you're a mathematician, right? So you know that it's going to approach 0, but then this jackpot still distorts that. Were you thinking logically at that point, or was it just extra motivation to keep getting that feeling?
At that point, you see, when I was engaged in it, I wasn't at all thinking logical. There was nothing logical. Like at times I was like just trying to mentally get myself to rip myself from this machine. That's how engaged I was. I wouldn't get up to eat. I wouldn't get up to drink. I wouldn't get up to go to the bathroom. And if I was going to go to the bathroom, I'd be sitting there with the ticket in my teeth thinking, I really don't even want to wash my hands because I just want to get back to that machine. And that's how it was just an impulse that was just unbelievable. And I could feel that coursing through my veins feeling get back to that machine. I hit like 3 or 4 jackpots. It was a short amount of time. And that was, again, reinforcing that it's going to come back to you. You're going to pay a price for this. I know that. I know it's going to cost me something. I know I'm buying a product, but it's going to be okay. It's not going to cost as much as you thought it was going to cost. So the pandemic hit. And then, of course, the YouTubers who were doing slot streams, told us you can go online and gamble online. Well, that became insane. That was insane. That escalated things even more, to the point where I was just constantly gambling on my phone.
Was it because of the access that you had to it, or was it because the games were fundamentally different online?
No, I felt like the games were the same. It was the same kind of stimming thing that I was doing. I knew when I was doing it, this was very dangerous. That was the first time I started to absolutely empty my bank account into, this site. And then I would have pulled some money out as I won, if I won. And I was waiting for that money to come back into my account that I had actually pulled out and put back into my checking account. So it was like, I really wish I could print out, and I could, those bank statements from those days, because it looks like complete insanity. I used to think, oh my God, if there's someone on the other side looking at this, they must think I'm absolutely crazy.
Did anyone know what was going on? Because, you can do this kind of in isolation.
I could do the online gambling to some degree in isolation, but people did know what was going on. But if they asked me when I came back to the casino, I would say things like, I won some, I lost some, came out about even though I'd lost like a lot of money. And when I was doing it online, it's okay. I always, if I go up above $100, if I win $100, I pull it out. So it's okay. It's okay. Yeah, I was completely consumed by my phone. So the pandemic goes on. I knew that was a real problem. The online gambling I knew was really going to create an issue in my life. So I actually banned myself, unbanned myself, banned myself, unbanned myself from online gambling several times. I finally banned myself from online gambling for the last time before I actually stopped gambling altogether. And I decided the only way that I was going to be able to continue doing this was to do it live at the casino.
When you're saying that you're banning yourself online, does that mean you're closing accounts, or does that mean you're going through like a state agency to like exclude yourself from play? Which was it?
No, at that point, I hadn't gone through a state agency. I had just done whatever. There were like 2 websites that I would go on to gamble. There were 2 of them, and I banned myself from both. And to be honest with you, at this point, one of the weirdest things I did was I would ban myself from one and go play on the other. Then I would ban myself from that one, go unban myself from the other. I pop back and forth between the 2. And I'm not sure that I'm banned from both right at this moment. I finally was able to get myself away from that. So
I ask because a lot of times if people don't have a gambling problem, they'll say, oh, just ban yourself. But then there's another one and another one and another one. So it's like you need numerous things in a recovery process to actually be successful. But back to your timeline now. So it's reaching this peak where you're going back and forth. You're trying to stop the online gambling. You're seeing it differently than the in-person. When do things kind of hit their peak?
I knew that I was going to be retiring soon from teaching, and I was burning out from teaching. The pandemic did that to a lot of teachers. It wasn't the same afterward. So I knew I was burning out. I knew I had to retire soon. Retiring would mean I would get a large sum of money. And I knew I couldn't trust myself with a large sum of money because I had worked gig jobs, any job that would somebody would come up to me and say, you can do this and make some money. I'd do it because then I could gamble with that money, because I was a very responsible gambler. I never didn't pay my bills. I racked up a lot of debt because I didn't pay down debt or because I paid a bill with a credit card, but I never took cash advances or something like that. I just made sure that all of my income could go to, as much of my income as I could go to gambling. I was very responsible in that way, but I knew that I was going to gamble that retirement. I looked at it and I thought, oh my God, I'm going to gamble that money. That's what bothered me. I thought, oh my God, I'm going to gamble it. I can't control myself. In the same way that I had sort of started by looking onto YouTube, I had looked at some videos on anti-gambling, but I saw men I saw sports betting. I saw these huge quantities of money. I know you don't like to talk about money on your channel, but I was doing like 50-cent dollar bets, $1.50 bets, just to keep it going for as long as I could. So I wasn't gambling large quantities of cash in that way. You know what I mean? I wasn't making a $10,000 bet. And that's all I saw online, or these people who had nothing left. And I wasn't completely at the bottom of the barrel. That I didn't identify with that, but I knew I needed help.
That's the exact reason why I don't talk about the money. That,
Yeah.
because what you just described is like you are dealing with emotional turmoil, but the financial situation doesn't exactly mirror what you see online as the problem. So in your mind, you say, I'm not that bad, right? Or something like that. I can keep going until I get that bad. At least I'm not losing that. And that's why I don't talk about it. So sorry to interrupt, but I just wanted to raise that point.
No, that was it. And that is when I was on TikTok one day, your live stream came up and I sat and watched it. And that's what I connected with. The fact that you weren't talking about money, the fact that when you were talking about money, but you were talking about amounts,
Right.
the dopamine connection was big because I was definitely doing it for the dopamine. I was definitely doing it for something other than the money. I knew I wasn't going to get rich off gambling. I knew the math of the situation. I knew this was going to cost me money. That wasn't the reason I was doing it. There was more to it than that. And the dopamine was really the connection. I thought, this is something here. This is making sense to me. When I was watching your TikToks, I was not ready to do it yet, but it was like May of 2023. I knew I needed to do it. I knew I was going to do it soon. And I was getting this big lump of cash from a job that I had done. This is where my mind was. I'm just going to do this one more time. And I'm just going to do it until I'm sick. And I did. I went to the casino with this lump sum of cash that I had. It was terrible because I couldn't lose it that particular day. I mean, eventually I would lose it, but it was hours. I was sick doing it. I was like sick doing it, rapid fire. It was terrible. It was just when I left that day, I was just busted. I was just busted, mentally busted, physically, just bleh. I had done it to nausea. So I went home and it was hard to self-exclude, but the next morning I did it actually. I self-excluded in Pennsylvania. This is another point I want to make sure I get. I had physical withdrawal symptoms. I know that people ask that sometimes in your chats when you're doing things. I had physical withdrawal symptoms, and I think it's because a lot of it had to do with that stimulation or numbness or whatever I was doing to myself chemically. I have no clue. About 2 weeks after I self-excluded, it dawned on me, what have I done? I need to go gamble somehow. I still had the card for doing a gig job. I went to the grocery store and I sat there waiting for a job to come through. And for some reason, 30 minutes went by. I was in a panic. I'm like going to drive 2.5 hours out of the state to legally gamble. And about 30 minutes later, I just broke into a complete sweat that was just unbelievable. And I started to calm down. And I thought, you're going to be okay. You need to go home. So I went home. I cut up that card for the gig job that I had, made sure I deleted that app so I didn't have any desire to go make extra money that I could do this with. And I went home, and from that point on, it got easier, but it was a physical thing sitting in the car that day. It was physical. From that point on, I just started doing it a day at a time. I do see a psychologist because of my symptoms of autism that I have. I will be tested for autism soon. It'll be May of next year of 2025 that I will be officially tested for autism and find out whether that need that I have, the struggle that I've gone through most of my life is associated with autism or it's trauma related. I'm not sure which. And I've been doing really good. I watch your stuff. I'm afraid of screwing up. I'm afraid of relapse, but I think I'm pretty good at this point. In my mind, I look at a day, and I've had some pretty bad days in 2024, to be honest with you. I did end up retiring from teaching because things got so bad. Even on my worst day, if I put a list of things I want to accomplish for the day, first thing on that list is not gambling. That I'm not doing. I don't care if I lay in bed all day and pull the covers over my head. That's great. You know what? Because you didn't gamble.
There you go.
So no matter what else happened, no matter what else you didn't get done, you know what? You didn't gamble. And I've called friends and told them that, you know what? I had a crappy day, but you know what? I didn't gamble.
When you were gambling on the slot machines in the casino, and I'm only asking this question because I've heard about it, but I've never experienced it personally. If there were small interruptions in the game, like small wins, did that make you mad, even if you were winning money?
Yes. Yes.
Why?
It was an interruption. If I got a bonus on a slot machine, I would get agitated because it was an interruption. It was an interruption in this aura that I had going in front of me of this numbness. It like woke you up from this dream state you were in, or from this disassociation. I was able to disassociate. That's something that I understand from seeing a psychologist, is that I have a tendency to, if I'm under a lot of stress, I will disassociate. That is what it was. You're disassociating, and then someone is interrupting that disassociation, so your numbness is going away. It's almost like someone waking you from a really deep sleep. And you're like, I just want to go back to dreaming that dream. I just want to go back to sleep and get back to that dream. You interrupted my dream.
See, I had a different experience. I was mainly a sports bettor for the majority of the time I was gambling. I did get into slots, but I was always chasing a win. I wasn't chasing that dissociation, that escape. So it's fascinating to me, even as a problem gambler myself, and it must be mind-blowing to someone that's not, that winning money bothered you in practical terms.
I just wanted the money to be good enough that I didn't have to worry about it. That's all I wanted. And I remember sitting back and like looking around like, how long is this bonus going to take?
Within the time that you were gambling, do you feel like, in addition to just this chaos that you were going through of maintaining it, of getting back in, of gambling more, do you feel like there were aspects of your life that you missed out on?
Yes. My daughter is everything to me. And spending time with my daughter is really important to me. So I was down visiting my daughter in her home, and she had put on the musical Hamilton for me to watch. I was gambling on my phone while I was watching the musical. And at some point, my daughter came and took the phone from me and said, you know, you're not paying attention to this musical. So I sat down and watched it. And I don't remember really having any strong reaction to watching this musical on the television. And just the fact that I wasn't paying attention to the time I was spending with my daughter was horrible. About 2 months ago, now that I'm not gambling, I went to actually see Hamilton on Broadway. And I see this and it blows my mind. It's like the best thing I've seen ever. I'm crying at the end. I'm feeling everything. It wasn't the original cast. We actually had a sub in for Hamilton. So it wasn't even the Hamilton that usually is there, but it still blew my mind. So when I came home from that experience where I was like, wait, I watched this. And so I watched it on television then again which would be the third time. And it was like I had never seen. It was like it was a new experience. I was like, I'm blown away by it. Why didn't I have this reaction the first time? And it was because when I was gambling, I was so numb. I was numb to enjoying anything. Gambling took away my ability to enjoy anything in my life. Now that I'm in 500 and something days of recovery, oh my goodness, I can feel again. I can enjoy things, simple things. I was making dinner last night. I have a little light jazz playing in the background and I'm cooking and I'm enjoying it. And I should be able to enjoy those little things in life. When I was gambling, I couldn't enjoy any of that. I had no joy. My joy is back. And that's one thing I would like people to know. At first, when you're recovering, you're going to feel like crud. But your emotions and your joy and feeling good about things that you don't think you feel good about anymore, that will come back. It will come back. You will be able to recover. That was one of my biggest fears when I was recovering, was that I would never feel normal again. Wow. And I do. I feel normal now.
How long do you think it took to start feeling joy in those little things again?
I would say between 2 to 3 months. That's when I started to feel like I've got some some traction here. I feel like I'm starting to feel better about things. At first, I was forcing myself. At first, go do that. You should. It'll make you feel better. Go do this. Go do that. Now, I would never want to go back to the way I felt when I was gambling. I would never want to go back to feeling that way now. Now I feel, and that's what am I, about a year and a half of sobriety. So a year and a half from sobriety, I feel like I can enjoy everything. I almost feel like I enjoy it more than I did even prior to gambling. So it's weird.
Oh, that's not weird at
But
all.
yeah, we will recover.
That's amazing. And you say that when you were playing slots, it was this intense numbness, this intense dissociation. Have you found other activities to replicate that, or have you been seeking to kind of, reduce the need to even feel that way?
Yes, that is a good point to be made. It kind of goes back to autism. Some stimming is normal, but that was a lot of stimming. So I'm trying to avoid that activity. I'm trying to avoid any activities that get me too locked in, too disassociated with the world. So I limit my social media. I limit anything that would cause me to feel that, stim sort of brain feeling where I'm disassociating. Yes. So I try to do things slower. That is incredibly important for at least my brain. Slow down. You don't have to rush through this. You can enjoy this. So I tell myself those sorts of things. So yeah, I do try to avoid actually the whole concept of disassociating or stimming to the point of numbness. Yeah.
Yeah, I think I could benefit from that personally as well. I think I've reached a point where I'm over consuming content on my phone. I'm overusing technology. I don't think it's necessarily to dissociate as much as it is like a complete aversion to boredom or to like not being stimulated at all. Do you feel that way to an extent?
Yeah. And I've talked to my psychologist about that. Boredom equals low dopamine. That's what that equals. So when you feel bored, you're looking for a dopamine hit.
Mm-hmm.
So you're going to go to your easiest dopamine hit. So what I try to do is do something, again, that whole concept of it, slowing it down. This doesn't have to be immediate. What can you do to slowly build up? Even doing something quite ordinary, like making a list or completing a task. That's the one that always sticks in my head. If you just complete a task, a 10-minute task, that's going to increase your dopamine. So I try to start something, at least start it. So you promise yourself you complete this task in 10 minutes. I end up doing way more than I thought I was going to do, and I feel really good afterward. Like yesterday, I did a sub job, and I was baking cookies with some kids down in a school near where I live. And I came home and I thought that was so much fun with those kids just to get them through making these cookies. You know what I mean? So it's just little things like that. It doesn't have to be this grand event, that you're trying to spike up your dopamine with. It can be something small.
Not only small, but something real. When we're
Yes.
talking about slots or we're talking about social media, swiping, like any kind of just mind engagement, it's artificial. And that's what we get with substances. That's what we get with basically anything that we can get addicted to. And so,
Right.
what you're talking about is so real. It's like you're really living your life now.
Yes. And baking cookies with the kids at the school yesterday. I was interacting with humans. You know what I mean? Not a machine. And, all of those things. Yeah. I sit and do homework with my great nephew, and that's joyous. It feels really good just to sit there with him and to not feel rushed, to not have gambling going on in my mind saying, wouldn't you rather be doing this? No, I don't want to do that.
Yeah, you told me before the call started today that it's been 538 days since you made your last bet. So congratulations. It'll be even more by the time this podcast is edited and posted up. But it's these kinds of stories that can really help to change the trajectory of someone's life. And so I appreciate you coming on and sharing it.
Yeah, and that's what I hope. I hope that someone sees a woman. I hope someone sees a 60-year-old woman. I hope someone sees an intelligent woman who sees a professional who has a degree. For me, my vision of a gambler, was a male. He was unshaven. He was on his last dollar. I mean, that wasn't me. But so I hope that someone sees me and sees a gambling addiction, because it can really happen to anybody.
All right, Alex, thank you once again for sharing your story. And to anyone that's watching that wants to hear another story of someone who's overcome gambling addiction, check out this video and let's keep getting better together.